Knows we are recording this. Okay, so we are on live with YouTube. Thank you all for coming. I'll introduce Carol Cullum, our parliamentarian. My name is Thomas Bilbo. I'm the chairman. Carol will be moderating tonight, and I will be assisting with technical stuff. So I'm going to leave you guys go, and we'll start off with Carol.
Great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start off first with Christina Strawbridge. Christina? Are you there?
There I am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. I'm Vice Mayor Christina Strawbridge, and I'm running for mayor of Benicia. My campaign is based on proven leadership for 35 years. It's time. Compassion, collaboration, and cooperation will be my objectives as the new mayor of Benicia. There's a lot of work before us, and success will come with brave decisions based on listening and collaborating with the community, the city staff, and the rest of the council. As mayor, my leadership and understanding of what it takes to run a full-service city, especially in the aftermath of an economic and health disaster, could not be more important. My diverse experience of serving on the council from 2011 to 16, and then being elected and appointed as vice mayor in 2018, coupled with owning 2 businesses in Benicia, gives me a unique perspective, vested interest, and true passion for Benicia. I have been an advocate for small business and keeping Benicia's small town charm, serving on Benicia Main Street Board as the event coordinator for the program for 10 years. I helped launch our successful farmers market in 1992 and coordinated city events that included the 4th of July, downtown Christmas events, and Millennium Celebration in 2000. As the chair of economic development, I worked with stakeholders championing the city's successful tourism program that has brought visitors to our town that dine, shop, and eventually stay for good. Another priority and success was helping to save the 2 state parks, Benicia's state parks, from closure and bring attention to deferred maintenance and a plan of action for the future. On November 3rd, you will have an important choice on the leadership of our future. It's time. Christina Strawbridge for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to start with some questions. And what I'd like you to do is take about a minute to answer after I've asked the question. So,
Carol?
Yeah?
We were going to go through and have everyone do their introductions and then come back with the questions.
Oh, okay.
And do round robin per question.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And Steve Young.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'm Steve Young. I'm running for mayor of Benicia. I'm currently on the city council. For those who don't know anything about me, I spent my career in local government managing community development and housing, affordable housing projects up and down California and on the East Coast. I retired in 2008 as the director of community development in Sacramento County, where part of my job involved the redevelopment of closed military bases at McClellan and Mather Air Force bases. And I also worked in low-income neighborhoods, working with problem properties and the sheriff's department and the district attorney. I retired in 2008. I moved to Costa Rica with my family, where we lived for 4 years, primarily to give my daughter an opportunity to live in a different culture. When she graduated high school and came back here to go to college, we came back as well, settled in Benicia. I got active. I was appointed to the Planning Commission. One of the first things I got involved in was the crude by rail proposal from Valero. I was an active questioner of that project, and ultimately the Planning Commission turned it down on a unanimous vote, and that vote was later upheld by the City Council. In 2016, I ran for City Council, was elected with the most votes, became the vice mayor as a result. And since I've been on the council, I've worked on a number of different initiatives. I'd like to speak tonight, and I hope we will get to the issue of the pandemic and the response from the community to COVID. one of the things that I did early on was formed an organization called Benicia Strong, which was a number of churches in the community, along with social service agencies that were dedicated to dealing with hunger issues. It has since evolved to include other types of assistance. But one thing is clear is that the hunger situation is getting worse in our community and throughout the county. And so I think that the city needs to be aware of and be setting some money aside to deal with the possibility that we maybe have to provide assistance to hungry families in Benicia as well. I don't know where I am on my time. In any event, there are a couple of things having to do with the pandemic that I have initiated that have not necessarily received council support. I wanted a chance to talk about it, but I'm probably using up my 2 minutes now. So maybe we'll get to it later. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to Stonewall. And I certainly appreciate your consideration and of supporting me with your endorsement. Thank you. Did I stop too early? Do I have more time?
Carol, you're muted. Carol, you're muted. Sorry. Emily, you're on. Turn on your mic. There we go.
All right, there we go. Sorry about all that. I was trying to message you, Carol, to let you know you were muted. Thank you so much, Carol, and for Tom for facilitating this, and good evening, Democrats. Thank you so much for this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Emily Gollinger, and I'm a candidate for mayor of Rio Vista. I am a proud 40-year resident of Rio Vista, and I am passionate about our future and prepared for our challenges. I have served as the Parks and Recreation Chair, a planning commissioner, and volunteered in every way possible at City Hall for the last 10 or so years. I have volunteered at our schools as on-site council, and I've been a representative to the district for our LCAP committee. I've also been a coach, a referee, and an instructor, as well as the regional commissioner for River Delta AYSO. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I have been honored with an endorsement from the Solano County Democratic Central Committee and the executive board of the Rio Vista Democratic Club. I believe that our shared values and our ideals is what's been missing from Rio Vista for too long. I will always be an advocate for children, for working families, for the elderly, and a big proponent of a better relationship with our school district. I will work hard to make our city a city of inclusion, where we celebrate each other and we honor our differences. I'll bring people together and take advantage of existing partnerships and foster new ones. I would welcome your endorsement of my candidacy, and I look forward to working together to move the city of Rio Vista and Solano County forward. And thank you for all Stonewall does for Democrats in Solano County, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Next is Hakeem Brown. Hakeem?
Oh, thank you, Ms. Cullum. It's an honor to stand before the Stonewall Democratic Club. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Hakeem Brown. I'm a Vallejo council member, business owner for over 10 years here in the city of Vallejo, a delegate for the Democratic Party, second vice president of the NAACP Vallejo branch, and legislative chair for the African American Caucus for the California Democratic Party. But most importantly, I'm a Vallejoan. I grew up here. I went to school here. This community matters to me. Over the last decade, we've watched this city move in the wrong direction on a number of issues. Though I would say when it comes to addressing systemic racism, we've never had any movement. And this is the reason that I'm running for mayor, is to address these issues. There will be a lot of people up here running for Vallejo mayor who will talk about what they will do. I'm the only candidate who can talk about what I have done to address systemic racism. In fact, even saying the word systemic racism on the dais, that would be a first. Addressing rent control, That would be a first. Addressing growing youth opportunities as a tier 1 priority, that would be a first. And for me, making sure that we are actually seeing real progress when it comes to civil rights. Once a year, flying a flag is not civil rights, and the city of Vallejo has not moved forward when it comes to addressing civil rights issues. I'm the only candidate who has fought for an office of equity for the city of Vallejo, including fighting to get that in the budget, attending a GARE conference. I am the only candidate who brought Advanced Peace Project to the city of Vallejo and worked regularly in Vallejo schools, mentoring Vallejo kids. The city of Vallejo needs young, bold, fresh ideas and not the same old excuses. And that's why I'm running for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Avanel. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, good evening, everyone, and good evening, community. I'm Avanel Hanley Mills, and I'm a candidate for Vallejo Mayor. As a city, we are in a new path. The next movement must be forward, acknowledging the challenges of the past and the present, implementing best practices as preventatives. Our city needs social change, overturning the passivity of dormancy of government, bringing our city and its people to its rebirth united. To achieve success and consistent and permanent economic development to benefit all areas of our city's infrastructure, education, beautification, housing, entertainment, public relations, safety and peace, and our youth, senior, and those experiencing disability, and our LGBT community, and the entire community enrichment. The systemic inequity cycle must cease. Creating a government team to prioritize the city's growth is critical. Our city's budget gives over $75 million to departments of safety and law enforcement. Districts are experiencing access shortage to basic needs such as food, safety, and housing. City violence is historically high. This must stop. Our city has a new management team with directors from cities who have successfully transformed other communities from struggling to stability, economic growth. Through an innovative leadership, our city will be on the fast track. This is one of the reasons I'm the best candidate for mayor. Our citizens are exhausted with the violence and trust. They have sat patiently at times with hope, currently viewing division by those placed to govern. Change is imperative. My innovative leadership to our city in an all collective partnership and collaboration is needed. We must unite. It's important for our city to begin to look at how we include all areas of our community so that we can move forward with prosperity and success. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate. Yeah.
The next person we have is John Kenny.
Hello, you hear me?
I hear
Yeah,
you.
we can hear you.
Avanel, can you turn your mic off?
Great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Nice to see the people from Stonewall. I haven't been to a meeting in about 2 years, and since COVID, I haven't seen anybody except for on Zoom. I am running right now for mayor because I have been involved in politics for a number of years. I lived over in Japan for about 20 years. I owned a school over there. I own property over there. I've sent thousands of students on to university. I did homestays in Australia and back here to America. I dealt with many different cultures, many different people, the parents in Japan, the parents in Australia, the parents in America, the teachers, unions, and then getting everyone together and teaching my students how to go on to a better life. Here in America, since 2004, I've worked against electronic voting. I was in 2008 working on the ground with Obama in Ohio, particularly Cleveland, for about 3 months. I marched with the NAACP from Ferguson to Jefferson City after the terrible acquittal or the decidement not to even indict the officer who was involved in killing Michael Brown there. I've stood up for Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, as well. Finally, here in Vallejo, we moved here 6 years ago. We bought our property here 3 years ago. I just got really disappointed with all the status quo council people doing basically nothing up there, and all the toxic, violent, nearly violent atmosphere that you run into when you run into city council meetings. I think it's time for a real new vision for Vallejo, to push on with the status quo people and say goodbye to them and move on to real change, which is why I'm running here. I have brought both, I worked with voter participation, a number of people, some people even right here in this gallery here were involved with that as well. I was there on the final day as well when we all stood up and we got the final vote, which was very close, but we came through, we prevailed. And now there is by-district voting, which I think will help bring more of the diversity of Vallejo to City Hall. I think that's extremely important. I also brought a clean community choice energy bill, cheap, clean, green energy, and more jobs, jobs, jobs. For some reason, again, our status quo city council wouldn't even look at this. After going by in front of city council with numerous people, after going by numerous offices, after dropping off letter after letter, email after email, finally we went around them. We went to Al Gore's Climate Reality Project. We went directly to the mayor, directly to the city manager. They brought it back to the agenda after being ignored for months. And just in the nick of time, we got it in. Literally, the city council had to do almost nothing except for pass a resolution and pass the law. And then Marin Clean Energy did the rest of the work. And they wouldn't do a thing. Finally, with us bringing it from outside forces, we got it passed unanimously. So how come this city council doesn't do anything? I think that
Don,
one
your
big
2 minutes
problem
is up.
Well, thank you very much for a new vision and for real change. Please vote for me for mayor, Kenny 2020.
Thank you. And the next and last person is Robert McConnell. Robert, could you unmute yourself? No, don't take your picture away.
There we go. Okay. All right. Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all. I am Robert McConnell. I've been a long-time resident of Vallejo. It's been my privilege to have served on the Planning Commission for 8 years and now on the Vallejo City Council for 9 years. As you know, I was not originally intending to run for council, but when circumstances developed, I was asked to step up to the plate because I have the financial skills and the personality and the professionalism with which to lead this city. I work on a collaborative basis. I try to bring people together, normally because I'm often in the middle of things. And I see good things that the city council does and that it doesn't do. I also see good things that the city manager does and doesn't do, which explains why we are where we are. I tend to vote often against things because they're not good projects. And I think the circumstances of our economy has borne that out. But I am the one who brought to Vallejo the idea originally for district elections. And the reason I did that was that I believe it will give more power back to the individual people in this city that is otherwise held by special outside interest groups. For too long, this city has been controlled by people and groups of that nature, and that has to change. So I intend to reinvent the image and very operation and rethinking of the police department. I'm going to be pressing extremely heavily for the openness in government that has not been there the last 3 years. I intend to keep a very tight financial line because I am a financial services lawyer and the city is coming up on extremely difficult times, whether anyone likes it or not. But above all, I will bring an air of professionalism because I have a proven record to do that. So I'm asking for your endorsement as you have endorsed me in the past. I am grateful to you. Thank you so much. I look forward to your questions.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the questions. And I'm going to ask each person a question. You have approximately 1 minute to answer. If you can do it in less, that's great. And we'll see how many we can get. We're going to try and get as many as possible out there. So first, I'm going to go Christina Strawbridge. What initiatives would you propose to attract businesses to your city?
Well, thank you for the question. My background is economic development. I have owned several businesses in Benicia and served on our economic development board for 4 years before I was elected. So we as a city need to become much more business friendly. We are not known as being open for business. And I think that there are opportunities to attract businesses, but there's going to need to be new leadership in that area. I was the champion of our tourism effort, the Great Day by the Bay, that has attracted thousands of visitors to our town and from all over, actually the world, which is very interesting. And I think that we need to build on that, especially now with COVID. People are looking for the great escape. And so we are perfectly situated for that. We need customers. We need people to buy and dine. And to be honest, they are coming back. So those are my plans moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And the same question to Steve Young.
Thank you. Let me give you a specific idea. On First Street in Benicia, we've had a number of businesses close, and it's going to be hard to re-rent those spaces in this pandemic era. And so what I would like to see happen is have the landlords negotiate with the tenants, offer some rent relief or rent holding off rent payments for the first couple of months. And if they did that, then I would suggest that the city ought to step up and handle that rent payment for the third month. And with 3 months of rent relief, the new tenant would be able to afford to come in and do the capital improvements and tenant improvements necessary to get up and running again. And I think that's the kind of cooperation and civic partnership that the city could provide, and the type of leadership that is necessary in working with both new businesses and existing landlords to try to keep our main commercial strip active and profitable.
Thank you, Steve. And the next is Emily.
Thank you, Carol. Great question. Can you all hear me? I have problems with my microphone. Can you hear me?
You're fine.
Okay. So this is a great question. Before COVID hit, Rio Vista's Main Street was vacant building after vacant building after vacant building. So the impact on COVID has definitely had a more obvious effect on our Main Street businesses, because the few that we did have that were up and running are really struggling to make it now. One of the challenges that we have in Rio Vista is that we don't have an economic development department in the city staff. And that would be one of the first things I would do, is to hire an economic development coordinator who will work with stakeholders on Main Street as well as our industrial parks to find out how the city could be best supporting the businesses that we already have, and then come up with a marketing strategy to entice new businesses to come and to show them that Rio Vista is really a great place to do business because of our burgeoning tourism industry. So that's one of the things that we definitely need to look into doing. And the other thing is Rio Vista has a really big challenge with getting locals to shop locally. There isn't a lot to offer in Rio Vista. We have one grocery store.
Time is up.
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. I could go on for days.
I know, we all could. Hakeem, you're next.
Yes, thank you. Some initiatives I would propose is, number one, streamlining our planning department. I think that the things that hold us back from attracting businesses is we have a reputation for being a city that does not know how to do business, that has paralysis by analysis. We've never really focused on really taking a hard look at our planning department and making sure that it is clear, concise, and consistent when it comes to what businesses can expect when they walk into City Hall. That's what's been lacking that's been lacking in our city. That's what's held us back from opportunity. I think that we can have tax deferments, we can take a look at our zoning, but none of that will matter unless businesses understand that we know how to do business. As a business owner, I've seen us squander away opportunities, quite frankly, or not be able to make a hard decision. We should know what type of businesses we want to attract to this community, and we shouldn't dilly-dally around with sitting there and deciding, are they a good business for our community? It shouldn't take 2 years for us to realize that that this is not the business that we want in our community. We should be able to make decisions immediately. and take a hard look at what we want to attract to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Evanel, what initiatives would you propose to attract businesses to the city?
I think it goes in three to four areas. However, initially, coming together as a team with the city management team and other departments and the council to discuss ways that we can start speaking the language to our community and to surrounding communities about the positives of Vallejo. We can do many things. However, if we do not begin to have a different language of how we name ourselves, no one's going to come to our city. And so that's really important. We have tourism. We have thousands of tourists come to our city each year to stay in our limited hotel spaces. But however, they don't stay in Vallejo. And creating an area where they can stay and dine and shop in Vallejo is crucial. That's a huge revenue that we have not tapped into. Encouraging entertainment streams to come to our city. We've lost many entertainment revenue in our city, and inviting more to come and creating a space. Thank you.
Your time is up. Okay, the next person is John Kenny. John, what initiatives would you propose to attract businesses to our city?
It says unmute myself. I'm okay.
You're okay, I hear you.
Yes, Avenel hit it on the head right there. So did Benicia with their first street. We have to develop that downtown waterfront. This place is gorgeous. We got hills, we got bridges, we've got two different rivers, we got the Delta. We shouldn't be calling ourselves North Bay. We shouldn't be calling ourselves East Bay. We should be calling ourselves top of the bay, and that's what we should be. We need to bring in some of these tourism dollars. I like Benicia. We go there sometimes, many times because there isn't any other alternative or few alternatives here in Vallejo. But why do they call themselves the first capital? We're the first capital and we're the third capital. We should be exploiting that. I can't believe nobody has tried to do any sort of tourism package with that. We are a ferry ride away from San Francisco, and we're the stepping stones to Napa Valley and up into Sacramento. How come we're not exploiting that? So those are a couple really easy things we could do. Another big one is housing. How come we haven't had any multi-unit housing projects here since 2006? That is absolutely unacceptable. And both the council members who are here should have done something about it before now.
John, your time is up. Thank you. And Robert, you're on the unmute your microphone.
Okay.
There you go. You're on now.
Okay. iPad's a little tricky sometimes. Actually, we've been doing an awful lot of business development here in Vallejo. We've entered into our master agreements for Mayor Island. We've streamlined our general plan, which I was heavily involved with for several years, and the zoning code is working its way towards council right now. It will probably reach council in December or January, which will address many of these concerns. But picking up on John's idea about business incentives, what I think we should all do is have a business incubator where we have some of these empty buildings, get tax credits, bring in the local college to offer courses on how to run a business. Because I can tell you as an attorney who has put together businesses and taken them apart, that the number one reason they fail is lack of capital. The second is lack of knowledge as to their market. And the third is lack of proper office staff and the ability to run it. So by joining in a business incubator building, we can teach these people these skills, give them reduced rent for a period of time, have the college educate them, have lawyers come in so they don't make mistakes, which ultimately cause them to have to come here. And that way we can expand our base. But we also need to expand our population, because unless you have a demand for population, you don't have supply.
Thank you. Now we'll go on to another question. I think I'll start with Robert.
Okay.
Do you believe the reputation of schools detours development in our city?
Well, I've spoken with applicants who were considering coming here. Winco was one that I worked on very heavily to try to convince them to come here. And that is one of the first things they cite. They lead with their human resources department. And I've really attempted, and I do support the public schools. I'm a product of the public schools in California. So yes, it does. But there are also a number of things that the city can and certainly should do to join with the schools. And when Russell Kiang was on the board, we actually had joint meetings with the city council. We tried to address things together. Everybody didn't want to give up their power, but we do need to work on this together. There's no question about it, because schools are part of the equation. They're not certainly the only element, but they're an extremely important element, and we need to bring them all along together, or we don't make it either.
Thank you. John, would you like to answer that question? Do you believe the reputation of our schools detours development in our city?
Absolutely, it does. I am an educator by life, by training. As I said, I owned a school. I've had hundreds of students, 130 to 140 students in-house. And then we went out to the University of Notre Dame. I taught as a professor at the University of Notre Dame in Kyoto. I taught at National Micromotors, Panasonic, Sharp, a number of the big Japanese companies while I was there. Sold my business, came back here. I'm an educator by training for life. It's a real tragedy, the state of the schools here. I supported John Fox, who I saw was in the gallery earlier. I don't know if he still is. I really believe what he has to say about the school system. I know we've had some bankruptcies here. We still owe a lot of money to the state. That's a real shame, but we should do everything we can to promote the schools. If and when I become mayor, I would definitely go out. I would try to reach out to guys like John Fox, some of the other people on the board. I don't know who our superintendent's going to be. I believe Mr. Clark just stepped down recently. We should make sure we get out there and do the best we can for our public schools. We got to bring it up. Just 20 years ago, we were doing well. I don't know what happened in between. I wasn't here, but I would step in and try to do all I can.
Thank you. Now, Evanel, would you like to answer the question?
Yes. You know, one of the things that we as a city has been challenged with is understanding that the education of our students is a #1 priority. When schools are doing well, cities are doing well. And we have to begin to look at the district not as a separate entity, but an entity as one. We are one. We are a team. And until we begin to do that, you know, that's unfortunate that our school system will suffer. And so as mayor, for me, you know, education is key. I come from a community where, regardless of your economic background, education is #1. And that is important to our city, to our parents, to our students, and to our educators. However, as a city, we have to bring the district in, not as you know, like a separate department. We have to bring it as though we are a partner, we are a team, and show a city that education is #1. And creating systems where we are supporting our students, we're highlighting the positives of our students, so that other parents who have younger children, and also people who would like to come to our city, can see
Thank
that
you,
our
Evanel.
students. Thank you.
Thank you. Hakeem?
Yes, thank you. To answer your question, I do think the reputations of our schools detour development of our city. And I think that we have to look in the mirror and really hold city leadership responsible. I think everyone, all of my competitors had some good answers, but once again, it's not about what you would do. It's about what you are doing, what actionable items you're taking, not when you become mayor, you'll be in schools, but actually spending time in our schools to figure out what are the issues. And I'm the only candidate who has done that. I'm the only candidate who supported Measure S. My colleague, Robert McConnell, was against it. Measure S was a bond for our schools. And so I think that we have to put our money where our mouth is. As soon as I got in office, I fought to get growing youth opportunities as a Tier 1 priority. I had Councilmember Dew's support. I did not have Councilmember McConnell's support. So I think that we have to be very clear clear about making sure that we're actually doing the work and supporting our kids. I mentor Vallejo kids. I provide scholarships for Vallejo kids every single year. Trustee John Fox, Trustee Tony Gross, Trustee Ubaldi, they all know that whenever they need me at a school, I'm there. I support early childhood education and funding for early childhood education. These are things that matter to me. So until we take this seriously and actually address systemic racism, address the lack of opportunities for our youth, we will not get anywhere as a city. That's been part of the problem. That's been the architecture of this city, is we ignore our youth. And that's what's gotten us to the point that we're at today. Thank you.
Thank you, Hakeem. Emily, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, absolutely. So it's funny that this is a question, because this is actually just a debate that I had with our current mayor, who believes that the city council should have a completely hands-off role when it comes to the school district, and I couldn't disagree more. Absolutely, there is a correlation between how well our schools are doing and how well our city is doing, how well we are attracting not only businesses, but also housing developments. The first thing that you look at as a parent when you're moving into a new community is, how are the schools? Rio Vista schools struggle, like all public schools do, with funding sources. And we haven't, as a city, identified any creative ways to partner with the school district to even offer an after-school program. So the city of Rio Vista has no after-school program. We have no preschools, and we have one licensed daycare in the entire city. That shows me that we've got a problem, and the hands-off approach obviously isn't working. As a mother of 3 school-aged children, I can tell you that I am in the schools. I see what happens every day because I'm volunteering there. Hakeem is absolutely right. If you aren't in the schools, you can have that hands-off approach. But when you see it every day and what our students are going through and how deficient the system is for them, you can't help but move that to the top of your priority list.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Carol.
Steve Young? Unmute.
We're fortunate that the schools in Benicia are really quite good, and that people appreciate that. That's one of the reasons they moved to our community, and we are working with them on a regular basis on a number of different things. I have worked with the school district lately on the issue of siting air monitors in the community. Initially, the Air District was interested in having a community air monitor placed on a school site. The particular school they chose was not one that I would have chosen, but they're the professionals. But the school district did not really want that there. And so the Air District is having to sort of start over again. And I am urging them to look at other locations in the community that are a little more distant from the refinery. They also have been helpful in the food distribution program that I've been involved with Solano Food is Free. They allowed them to use the parking lot at Robert Semple. That was important for people in the low-income community of Benicia. And so I think there are lots of ways that the city is working with the school district, and I think the opportunities will continue in the future.
Thank you. And Christina.
Thank you. I'm very proud of our school district. It is the reasons why people move to our town. It's a well-run, we have dedicated teachers, principals, administration. I, in fact, have 4 of the trustees that are supporting me for mayor. It's important, as in hearing the other cities, to create what we have in Benicia as a liaison committee. And just so happens Steve Young and I serve on that council with trustees, with department heads, to discuss the relationship between the city and the school district. We have championed Benicia Reads. I sit on that committee, get people, parents to actually read to their children. This is again before pre-COVID, but those kinds of relationships with the school district are essential. This is where the formation of our children is happening. And when the diversity and race relations came up, you know, we went to the school district and said, what are you doing as far as the curriculum? Because that's what we need to do, is develop that curriculum to help our children understand what is going on with racism and equality. So I'm very proud of our school system. It's a shining star. Thank you.
Okay, the next question. Do you believe in using taxpayer money to support public art? We'll start with you, Christina.
Well, again, we have a thriving art community in Benicia. We're very fortunate to have attracted so many really professional, well-known artists to our town. We have an art and cultural commission that has utilized public art and to accept donations towards art that's being displayed in our library and around the city. And I'm sure Steve Young will talk more about Neptune's Daughter, which he was involved with. But we as a community need to promote our arts and to help them with their success. We fund many organizations that promote art. The city actually funds those with grants every year. We just had it on our agenda the other night, and it's helping for art to be successful and recognized in our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Steve.
Thank you. I agree with Christina. Public art is really important to a community. I would support spending taxpayer dollars on public art. I think it brings a lot of tourists, frankly, who will come and look at some of the great public art that we have here. She mentioned Neptune's Daughter. This was a statue that was a sculpture done by a Benicia artist, Lisa Reinertsen. She wanted, or I talked to her for a while and finally was in a position of being able to convince her that to donate it to the city. At the city council meeting, there was not support for putting any city money into the installation. And fortunately, a private citizen stood up at the last minute and said, I'll pay for it. And so the city didn't have to put any money of its own out, although we did have to go through a fairly lengthy permitting process that was longer than it needed to be. But it ended up with a great statue in a great location. And there are people who do come from out of town to see it, as well as the Robert Arneson statue. So I would, in summary, I think that public art is a great thing to do, and we ought to continue to support it.
Thank you. Emily?
Hi, thanks for the question. This is a great one, and not one that I get very often. Public art is absolutely important, and all art is valuable. We actually just had I don't know, I'm going to say about 5 years ago, we had a really large push by a volunteer organization to bring more public art to spaces. And that looked like a lot of murals around town, which are wonderful and enjoyed by a lot of people. And I know some people, like Christina and Steve said, you know, people come to Rio Vista to see our murals. So it's a great attraction for tourists, as well as for its beautification of the city that we live in. I would definitely support using public funds to increase the public art in our space, because frankly, it benefits, it's a valuable benefit to all of the citizens. Thanks, good question, good question.
Thank you. Hakeem.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, thank you. I think that's a good question. Yes, I definitely support funding on public art, but I will say I think that we do need to have a priority on how we spend our money. I love beautiful artwork. I think it really enhances a community. But when I see beautiful artwork with homeless people living right under it, when I see beautiful artwork with young women of color being sex trafficked, when I see beautiful artwork and we have kids who aren't getting the education they need, I think that we need to make sure that we have our priorities straight when it comes to addressing systemic racism, addressing lack of opportunity, lack of livable wage jobs in our community, and not just spending money while people go without. So I think that we need to be spending money and supporting our art community while also addressing systemic racism and a lot of deficiencies in our community.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Avanel?
Yes, this is an important question. As an artist, I think it's important for us to prioritize bringing art and culture into our community. As you know, I've worked with youth in art to express their emotions, and as the art and culture brings to a community, it enriches the community. We have a diverse culture in Vallejo, and there's so many artists that that we can be using as an avenue to increase our revenue. As we see in Benicia, it's a both and. We can enhance our art community and culture, and in that process also enrich our community and our youth and vulnerable citizens, such as those who are homeless and experiencing sex trafficking. It's a both and I think it's important for us to understand that art is part of our psychological development. Using our art brain actually enhances our creativity and our math skills. I mean, I think there's so many reasons why the importance of introducing and creating an art community for a betterment of our community. And not doing that is saying to our rich culture and rich diversity that it doesn't matter, and it does matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, John Kinney.
Thank you very much to both Hakeem for the question, number one, but to both Hakeem and Avanel for those answers. Absolutely, the two go hand in hand, both and, as Avanel said. And I think we are doing quite a bit of that. You don't ever want to step away from the arts. We do have a very vibrant community here. In fact, we need to put more into the art walk. I don't understand why we can have a farmer's market open, but we can't have an art walk open. In fact, it's more spread out, and there should be more ways for people to move around than there is in the farmer's market. So I don't understand why one can be open and not the other. Again, this is the city council who should be doing this. And I hear even the art walk people have gone out and gotten funding, but because the city has closed them down, they can't even get out. Another one is Artisan. That place is fun. Practically within the first 2 months that we were here, my wife and I went by there and just had a blast. Here's a piece of artwork I bought over at the coal shed. This is Jean Cherie. I think most of you know her. She did the lovely work of art right in front of the ferry port there. I think we should even try to get, again, top of the bay. We should try to get a whole artist colony, and like every fourth farmer's market, try to bring in all the various artists around, Benicia, whoever want to. It's a ferry right away. I mean, I can't understand why people wouldn't want to love to come over to Vallejo, walk up Georgia Street, have some fun, check out the artist places, get a few more anchor restaurants like First Street down in Benicia. I mean, this place, I think, is just an untapped gem. And we have so much talent, we have so much diversity, we have so many beautiful places and beautiful people here and great artists, and we really have to exploit that to its fullest.
Thank you very much. And Robert.
I've been a long-standing supporter of the arts. In 2008, before the bankruptcy, I was on the group that was working the idea to present to City Council a 1% funding for the arts, which would have succeeded had the bankruptcy not occurred. Over the years on council since 2011, I have brought that idea back. And every time I've brought it back, the majority bloc votes it down. So we need to put our money where our mouth is if we're serious about art. As one mayor once said, a city without art is a city without a soul. I'm a heavy supporter of the arts. I've been involved with them for decades. I'm a member of a nonprofit organization that does theater work, but we also need to expand it to the visual arts, the performing arts, and the auditory arts as well. So we definitely need to have arts in this city. I am a strong supporter of it. I always have been, and I will continue to be. Absolutely, no questions asked. But we need to have a majority bloc on the city council who feels the same way. And for the last 7 years at least, we have not had that.
Thank you. So now I have a different question. How can we make a police oversight organization more powerful than the VPOA, the Vallejo Police Order Association? Robert, would you like to address that first?
Oh, I would indeed. As most of you know, I've been calling for police reform since 2011 in this city. The union is extremely strong. It's protected by laws in Sacramento as well as locally. To actually have a civilian review board, we need to decide whether they're going to have the power to discipline. That is a major expense, which a city like Vallejo cannot really afford. That is why I have proposed that we have state licensing of law officers and discipline at the state level, just like we do with the State Bar Association. But it's really up to the desire of the citizens to come together and have this. We tried to do this in 2011, and we did put together a citizens review board. Many of the ideas that came out of that were implemented, and we actually made a lot of improvements. But obviously, in hindsight, they were not enough, and it needs to be revisited and redone much stronger than it has ever been before. We need the support of a majority of the police of the city council, which we have not yet had, plus the city manager, plus the chief of police. So that's the formula, 4 + 1 + 1. If we can get that, yes, then we can strengthen our civilian review board. And I do hope that that takes place no matter what, because I certainly am a strong advocate for it.
John, Kenny?
Yes, honestly, I've checked out some of the Facebook pages and I've been in city council and I haven't seen anybody in city council do anything to really reform police here. In fact, one person takes huge money from there and does nothing but support for the police over and over again when we had 55 bullets in 3.5 seconds. That is a crime. At a very minimum, we need to go out and have some new training for these officers. That's just unbelievable. But I actually saw your question as the VPOA. That is an association to defend the police officers. A city board would be very different. It needs subpoena power and it needs to be able to have real disciplinary impact. At a minimum, their recommendations have to be taken directly to the city council and voted on there, but hopefully we can even give it more power than that. But definitely they need subpoena power. I've fought since 2011 in the Supreme Court of the United States, in the Supreme Court of California, and I've gone against the Pitches motion, which is a very special, arcane little dinosaur of a thing which protects police officers from even discovery in a civil court. This is just unbelievable. With me and many other people at Diversity of Tactics, we finally got that overturned just last year. Now you can find the excessive force harassment and misconduct charges on an officer just by a Freedom of Information Act. Actually, California Records Act.
Now?
Yes, can you please repeat the question again?
Sure. How can we make a police or oversight organization more powerful than the Vallejo Police Officers Association?
Thank you. Our citizens are dying, and saying, calling, hoping, tried is not enough. And what we need to do is create a citizen committee board made up of all demographic of our community, including those citizens that have been traumatized personally through death or injury by the police department. I think it's important right now, and it's not just important, it's critical for us not to say that we're trying or we're hoping or we're calling or perhaps, that we have to say it will be done, because our citizens cannot see one more death happen in our community and have words like trying and hoping. Because what do we say to families when we say we tried? Well, they don't have their family member, and so we must create a system and a board where we have our citizens speaking louder and paying attention, and the governing board must begin to take action based on what the people are saying, not on what money is saying. Thank you.
Hakeem, would you like to address this?
Absolutely. So to answer the question, I think to the person who asked the question, I think we've been sold a bill of goods. when we have all these boogeymen in the city of Vallejo that the people who've been in charge for the last 10 years have blamed so that they don't have to own it themselves. Calling for police reform and actually doing something is two totally different things. And I agree with what Ms. Avenel just said. I tried, I was this lone no vote, and I tried for the last 7 years. That's not getting the job done. We need a mayor who's going to actually get something done. On my watch, we actually were able to put a civilian oversight commission into the budget and an office of independent monitor. That's not a coincidence. We were able to put a CAHOOTS program, which will use medical professionals to address low-level mental health calls. That's not I tried. That's called building consensus and getting the job done. The VPOA is only as strong as you let it be. And I think that we've had weak leadership, and we've had leadership that are quick to look for boogeymen so that they don't have to own it. As your mayor, I will own it. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily?
Sorry, I wasn't ready because I thought that question might just be for the Vallejo candidates.
Well, is that an issue in your neighborhood, in your community?
So we're very fortunate in Rio Vista. We have actually dissolved our Rio Vista Police Department because they were a department that was mired in controversy, lawsuits, wrongful arrests, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. And frankly, the city was about to bankrupt itself with lawsuits. And so there was a large citizen uprising, of which I was a part, that came to City Hall and demanded the resignation of our police chief and all commanders, which did happen. And so we're very fortunate now to be operating under contract with the Solano County Sheriff's Department. And I know that the Solano County Sheriff's Department comes with its own set of issues, but we are very fortunate that we have a local chief who is just responsible for Rio Vista and is really focused on the concept of community policing and much less about enforcement. And we're already seeing a decrease in traffic stops on Highway 12 of people who are Black and brown for ticky-tack violations like a broken blinker. So we're already seeing a huge reduction in those kinds of responses from the Solano County Sheriff's Department as compared to the Rio Vista Police Department 2 years ago. So we're actually headed in the right direction, and I pray for you, Vallejo, every single night.
Thank you. We need it. Steve?
Well, we're fortunate that we have, I don't want to say none of these issues, but we certainly don't have them nearly to the extent that Vallejo does. I think we have a really good police department. We have a great police chief who is now actually our interim city manager. He has done a lot to change the culture of the police department. I think that there are still some issues that should be addressed in terms of perhaps inherent bias that may still exist with how some of the officers are dealing with some members of people of color. But overall, I think we have a very strong police department, and I don't see any need to have any kind of police oversight commission.
Thank you. Christina.
Thank you. Obviously, we are very fortunate to have an amazing police department. We've made national news on taking a knee when our protesters, mostly our students, came together in protest again for Black Lives Matter. Our chief, who is now our interim city manager, has the confidence and the appreciation of our community as the police chief, and now hopefully as our city manager. He has built, as Steve said, a culture of community policing, and already for the last few years has made changes within the department. The council recently funded body cameras. They are changing policy on stops and actually response to calls based on ethnic possibilities of the call itself. And so, we don't have the same situation as Vallejo, but we will need to, again, stay vigilant. And as the other issue is that we do a lot of community outreach. We have 11 or 12 neighborhood watches, and those people actually help us.
Christina.
And so we're very lucky. Thank you.
Thank you. And okay, that's that one. Now I have a fun question. If you had one day to spend $1 million gift in your city, what would you do? Christina.
Wow, a whole $1 million. Well, $1 million doesn't go very far, unfortunately. But I think that we as a community need to invest in our children and in our future. And so there's a lot of areas where we could use those dollars to help, again, with the school district, with our city. And I'd like to see more of those activities devoted to our future, as I say, with our children. Recently, we had before us Fitzgerald Field, which is a historic ball field. That is a $1 million ticket to restore it. And I voted for it because I felt like it represented hope for our kids. And so in these times, we need to give all the hope we can to our future. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, $1 million. What are you
$1
gonna do?
million for the city, I would put it into additional street repairs. We have been very unable to address all of the street repairs we need, even a little bit. We are over half or almost half of our streets are in a failing condition. And it's old. We don't have nearly enough money to even try to maintain them in the condition that they are now. And so $1 million would, not go a long way, but it would certainly be an important addition to the amount of money we're putting into our street program now. So that would be my choice.
Great, thank you. Next is Emily. What would you do with $1 million?
Oh my gosh, I couldn't even wait. I couldn't even wait to unmute myself, honestly. 100%, I would take that $1 million and create a salaried position at the city hall who is in charge of parks and recreation and youth activities in Rio Vista. The statistics bear it out. Kids who go to after school programs or who are involved in recreation programs in their communities are less likely to get in trouble. Their grades are better. They do better, socially, and it improves the value of the community to all of its citizens when our kids have something to do. So that I would staff that position and I would charge them with creating an after school program as well as coordinating all the recreation opportunities in town so we can get more kids involved in activities with their city recreation department. That's a great question. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Hakeem.
Yes, if I had $1 million, if I had $1 million to spend, I would have to spend it addressing our youth. I would use it on programs for our transgender students. I would use some of that money to address early childhood education. I would use some of that money to address mentoring programs and stop the violence programs for our youth who are struggling in these streets. I would use that money to help our teachers and ensure that our teachers are able to teach our students, particularly and during a pandemic with everyone having to learn from home. So for me, I would use it to support our youth and address systemic racism as it relates to our youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Avanel.
Yes, $1 million. Well, first I would ask the community to match it so that we can double that $1 million, that we can put more into the community. However, I concur with everyone else in terms of youth is critical. I also think our elder community is important. So, we don't really have a community center that caters to the community, and putting money into that where our youth or parents or seniors and everyone can come together. Because for me, I think when you bring a community together, you enrich it and you empower it. So creating a community center where we can now begin to increase many of those areas that is needed or highlighted. Education can go into a community center. When there's a community center, we can have parent support. So I think really putting it into a community center, but also in the meantime, encourage our community, because we are a team, and that's the important thing. When we come
Thank you,
together
Valerie.
as one. Thank you.
Thank you. John, $1 million.
If I had $1 million, geez, what a great question. I agree with both of the people prior to me, both Hakeem and Avenel. Have some great ideas. I thought about the senior citizen community center. We need that. I didn't really think about it in application of this, but that's a great idea. Even a better way to stretch your dollars, I would put out a little brainstorming, number one, with the youth here right out into the schools here, and number two, with the citizens. But we already have the Anchor Center down there coming from Cal Maritime. We need to partnership with them more. What a beautiful little gem of a university there, and what a great spit of land down there right underneath the bridge. But they have a center right downtown. I think we could do something like a model United Nations, bring some of the kids in there, make sure there's a rotation. All the high schools get in there, all the junior high schools get in there. Make sure you're bringing different kids in there. Try to open that whole center up. I mean, obviously $1 million doesn't go very far. So to be able to use something like that to piggyback on something which is already there, I didn't even think about it. As I said, Avenel brought up the seniors. To build a senior citizens community center, I think is huge, but I don't think $1 million is going to get you even halfway there for something like that. But, if you already piggyback on what's there, there's other things you can do with kids, try to open up some of the sister school relationships we have. Again, that's where I come from, education and being international. We have such a diversity of communities here. Why not do the same thing that I was doing from one country to another, from one culture to another, from one language to another, right within inside of our own
Thank you,
community.
Steve.
And there we are, right on Georgia Street, just a beautiful piece of land there.
Did I lose track of people? Who
Bob,
hasn't answered this question?
Bob has
That would
not.
be Robert McConnell.
Bob, okay. Right.
All right. Well, my heart would have to trump my mind here. My mind says put it into street repairs, but that would hardly make a dent at the cost of streets. So instead, I would look for a way to capitalize that $1 million to make it last as long in perpetuity as I could. And what I would do is I would seek a partnership with the nonprofits that are addressing the needs of the homeless. If we hired at straight salary 5 people at $100,000 a year, that would be the $1 million. But if we invested and partnered with nonprofits, we could make that last for several years. We have authenticated 629 homeless people in town. That still leaves a lot to be attended
so
to.
let's ask John to ask his question, I suppose. Okay. All right, back to it.
So by partnering with some nonprofits and to capitalize that money, it could address the needs of the homeless, which are so devastating and so extensive that I think that's where my heart would take me, and it would be the most effective use of that money. Can't hear you.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. A question that came in from the audience. Would you support a local LGBTQ candidate? And if not, why? And have you ever not supported an LGBTQ candidate, and why? And I will start that off with Robert.
I have supported other ones. I also have not supported one of them. That's not the criteria for me to make my judgment upon. I look upon the skills, personality, the ability to do the job, and how well they are suited for the position. So just to support an LGBTQ candidate makes no more sense than to support a Caucasian or an African American or any other ethnic group simply because of that status. You have to look at their values, what they will do and what they won't do, and make your choice accordingly.
John?
Yeah, I have to agree with Robert 100% there. I mean, it's the merit of the heart, the character of the candidate. It's not the color of their skin or their persuasion or any other thing. The world's come a long way in just these last couple decades. I mean, originally, our country was born in the sin of slavery. 10% of the white males who owned property were the only people who could vote. We've gone a long ways from that. We're far from colorblind. We still have a lot of issues, and we all have implied biases within our hearts, but you have to look at the candidate one by one. And of course, I mentioned one person who I've knocked doors for, who's in the gallery today. I've knocked doors for other people. Some were gay or LGBT, some weren't. And it's really not the issue. It's where they stand on the issues, number one for me. And then, of course, the candidate themselves and da-da-da-da. But I believe in politics very strongly. I think there's a lot of progressive things we can do, and we need to do them. We need to open up our city to everybody. And I think I'm one of those agents of change. I think
Thank
we
you.
can step away from the status quo and make some real change, some real vision.
Thank you. Evanel?
Yes, I think it's important for diversity. And over the years, yes, we've seen how inclusion and inclusivity has created communities where citizens feel more part of. And there will be a presumption that if one is running for office, that there's the education, there's the value that states to our community, as with anyone else. However, I think we have been a country that have been slow in diversity in the political department. As a member of the LGBTQ community, I think it's important for our city of Vallejo, because we have a large population, and saying that you have to be mindful that they have the values and they have the criteria. It's another way of saying that, yeah, maybe or maybe not, but diversity is key. We are a diverse city, and having representation is critical.
Thank you, Evanel. Hakeem?
Thank you, Ms. Cullum. And I think that what Ms. Hanley Mills said was right, spot on. I would totally disagree with both John Kinney and Robert McConnell. And I think once again, here in America, hearing that come from older white men saying who's qualified, who's not qualified, I think that's a dangerous road. And that's what's wrong with this country. And that's what's wrong with this community. I commend Ms. Hanley Mills for running, and I support LGBTQ candidates strongly. We share values. We share a struggle. I supported John Fox, our vice chair, is a very qualified candidate. And it's been an honor to work with him. And he is someone who I really look up to. That's the kind of leadership that we need. And I think that seeing, people sitting there and getting to decide, well, who's qualified, who's not, I would totally disagree. If that were the case, there would be no need for Prop 16, which I support. There'd be no need to ensure that minorities have the same opportunities that both John Kinney and Robert McConnell have. I've supported Carolyn Weisinger. I've supported Dylan Horton. I support candidates. Actions speak louder than words.
Thank you.
Hakeem's brought up both mine and Robert's name. I would like to
turn yet, sir.
To
not your turn.
rebuttal that.
Not your turn.
It's rather a ridiculous thing.
Not your turn, though. Sorry.
Emily.
I absolutely agree with Hakeem and Avenel, and thank you for saying it. Diversity matters. And if for no other reason than showing our children that LGBTQ members of community can be in positions of leadership, if for no other reason, that is valuable. And if for no other reason, it shows our Black and brown children that Black and brown people can someday sit on city council, can be mayor, can be the president of the United States. Diversity matters. And I think obviously you're not going to elect somebody who happens to be LGBTQ but can't spell their first name. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about already qualified people who also happen to be LGBTQ or happen to be African American or Latino or, fill in the blank. It matters, and diversity does matter, and representation matters, and that identity can help put a candidate over the top to be what a city needs to be reflective of their own community.
Thank you, Emily. Steve Young.
Thank you. So I have certainly supported candidates, but in Benicia, we haven't had any LGBTQ candidates step forward. But I supported John Fox, Quentin Voice. The question was, have I ever not supported an LGBTQ candidate? Well, I gave money to Pete Buttigieg when he was running, but when it came to vote in June, I actually voted for a different candidate. I think diversity is super important. In Benicia, we have not had much success getting people of color or gay people to run. I think that's something that we're lacking and that we need to work on. But it's also true that, being gay or being a person of color alone is not a qualification. So all things being equal, I'm always going to probably hedge towards a person of color or a LGBTQ person. But in politics and candidates, things are never equal. And so you have to make a choice based on their overall qualifications. And I think it just requires more people willing to step up. And it's a hard thing, whether they start on a board or a commission or they're actually going to run for office. It takes, as all of us who are up here today know, it takes a hard head, a thick skin, and the willingness to put in a lot of time. And hopefully we'll see more people in that category joining us.
Great, thank you. And Christina?
Yeah, thank you. It's sad that we have to ask that question. We should all be equal in the eyes of, all of us. I have 2 gay sons, and I would be just devastated that they would not be able to run for office because of being gay. We should be beyond this, but we're not. And so, of course, a person is a person, and what they bring to the role of an elected is what makes us special as a community and as a town, as a country. So hopefully we can get beyond this. It's just amazing that in 2020 we've come far, but not far enough. Thanks.
So is there a chance for a rebuttal here when people specifically pull out your name?
John, we will let you cover that in your wrap up.
I won't waste my time.
Tom, can I introduce
Carol,
myself?
you are you are muted. One thing I want to do is to also introduce John Fox, who is our vice chair who's here, and also the president of the school board. That's there. So there we go. So Carol, you are now unmuted. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to ask some questions just of the mayoral candidates in Vallejo. How do you propose to stop the police violence in this town? Do you support a citizen review board with hiring and firing and subpoena power? And let me start with Robert.
Thank you. I do support a civilian review board on many levels, certainly the subpoena aspect of it. When you get into the hiring, firing, you'll have to first change the charter. That's our law. And that charter now presently specifically prohibits all council members, and unfortunately, even in many cases, the city manager, from having a say in the personnel decisions. Those are properly reserved under our charter, at least, to the HR director, and also through a grievance process within the department itself. How we're going to change the whole system is by changing the culture within the department. And that's not a fast fix. But instead of just hiring people based upon ethnic differences or gender differences, we need to expand that into sexual orientation, into religious organizations, into organizations they belong to. We need to make it as diversified in color as this city is, because unless you have a diversified police force, then you're going to continue with what you have. That starts in the academies. The curriculum needs to change. So if enough citizens finally come together and convince a majority of the council that there does need to be change, then we'll see that change.
John Kenny?
No,
Yes, absolutely. I support that citizens review board. I brought it up earlier as we were talking about the VPOA, and absolutely they need subpoena power. Absolutely they need disciplinary power, or at a minimum, the ability to bring whatever recommendations they have immediately to the city council, where it can be brought out and brought into the light of day. We have to react to these things. I mean, this is just unacceptable what's been happening. I've been to city council a number of times. I was there when I was talking about my clean energy, and there was a woman up there who said they're murdering us in the streets. It was just like almost terrifying. I was so moved that when I went up for my presentation, I stopped and just gave about 30 seconds of my time to that issue. I went outside and talked to some of the family members. I've been out in the streets marching with them. I've talked to them a number of times. I've brought them up even in civil suits I've had. I didn't hear anybody on the city council say a word. This was just unbelievable. I mean, just how the humanness of your heart, someone could have said something. So I think the city council just is a do-nothing city council. I'd like to address the diversity issue, by the way. I mean, I said it specifically that we should be diverse, but that's not the number one issue. Hakeem is the only person here who actually went out and voted against voter participation laws, which the Supreme Court of this state have enacted. So for him to start calling other people on diversity is pretty rich. He takes money and all he does is vote for his special interests over and over and over again. The first thing he did was go and cut taxes on the guys who paid him tens of thousands of dollars so that he could go and get his special interest in and cut the money that we need here in Vallejo for his special group of friends.
Thank you. Evanel?
Yes, my interest is our citizens, and having a citizen review board is important. There's many different areas where creating some type of transformation in the police department, and I'd like to say, like, I prefer to say peacekeepers, because that's the original word. And I think we have to look at how that comes in, and community policing. Training needs to be extended. I concur with anyone who says training. However, it just depends on the type of training, because you can train and train. I'm sure they have training, but it's a type of training. And creating a system where the police department is part of the city, not a separate department that's there to enforce. It's a department that is to maintain peace, and that needs to be said from all governing sources. Not some, not a few, but all of us. And that needs to be the language that's sending out to a community, sending out to peacekeepers, because we need peace. We cannot, citizens are tired of burying their family members. And marching is great, but I don't want to march anymore. I don't want to march. Many of those who have died had futures, which they don't have. And we need to take a step, and we need to take a stand, and not a maybe, not a perhaps, but bring in committees that speaks for our city. Not,
No, thank you.
thank you.
Hakeem?
Yes, can you please repeat the question, Ms. Cullum?
For Vallejo mayor candidate, how would you propose to stop the police violence in this town? Do you support, do you support a citizen review board with hiring and firing and subpoena powers?
Okay, so I think since I've been elected, I've been trying to address the issues. I inherited a mess. On my predecessor's watch, we've seen more police-related shootings than in the history of Vallejo. I don't care about what lone no vote you were, something should have been done. On my watch, we've done something. Not only did we hire the first African-American police chief, but more importantly, we hired the first police chief who was grounded in 21st century policing. One of the first things he did is change the body cam policy. And I think that looking at how do we attract and retain quality, experienced officers when every city around us is going to pay more and do a better job of retaining those officers. When it comes to calling, I call for a third-party investigation to every police-related shooting. So I think that I've been doing the work, but we need to continue. We don't need excuse makers. We need people who are going to get the job done, because you can find a boogeyman every year, every month. It's always someone else. And that's not how I was raised. My mom raised me to look in the mirror and see what I can do. So to answer your question, yes, I support a civilian oversight board. I worked with a director from the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. I've sat there and put forth a policy and a program that I hope will be part of our civilian oversight commission. This is something that I am very passionate about. This is something that I ran on in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Hakeem. Emily? You don't really need one.
No, I thought the question was for Vallejo candidates only.
Yeah, you're right. So that's that one. Okay. I have one that came in from a member of the board, or a member of our club. Systemic racism is a problem in Vallejo, but so is ageism, sexism, and homophobia. What are your plans to deal with these issues in Vallejo?
Actually, can we make that for all the candidates, Carol?
Okay, I think I'll do that for all the candidates. You want me to repeat the question?
Please.
Yeah, okay, I'll repeat it. Systemic racism is a problem in Vallejo, but so is ageism, sexism, and homophobia. What are your plans to deal with these issues? And I'm going to start with Christina.
Thank you. Obviously, I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to talk about that, but I will talk about Benicia. We have made, the council has just voted some groundbreaking legislation to actually hire a diversity member to oversee race relations. So even in our town, even in every other town, there is racism. It's identifying it and how to address it. We were fortunate to have a group of Benicia Black Lives Matter come to our council meeting and give information to us on what their needs were. I had my own ideas before that meeting, having gone to several of the protests and talking to members of our Black members in our town. And I think that our idea is to set up a race relations commission to identify, to develop a program and actually formulate ideas to address it. So we've been pretty proactive in that instance in Benicia. Thanks.
Sorry, Steve?
Oh, thank you. Let me build on what Christina was talking about. I think it's important to acknowledge some basic truths. Systemic racism is real. White privilege is real. Inherent bias is, all of us suffer it to one degree or another. And that Black Lives Matter. I think these are basic things that people need to understand and on some level accept as reality. The things that Christina talked about were important and they were done. I'm not going to repeat the same thing. In terms of ageism, I think if you look at our city council, yeah, there's several people, there's 3 of us right now who are my age or older. And I'm not young. Getting younger people involved in the community is certainly a challenge, partly because young families who are moving here, at least pre-pandemic, they had jobs, they left the community, they came back, they worked full-time jobs, and a lot of them didn't really have the time or interest to dig into the minutiae of city government. But I think the other reality here is that 1/3 of our community is over 55. And so we need to have services for them. We need to be talking about how they can continue to live in this community in a comfortable fashion. A lot of them are live downtown in older 2-story houses that are sometimes hard to navigate, negotiate. So we need to have an ability to build some affordable housing for seniors so that they can move out of their where they are now and free up those housing for younger families.
Thank you. Emily?
Thanks very much for the question, and I absolutely agree with Steve. God, I think we can all agree it's nice to be in a Zoom with all like-minded Democrats. So yes, absolutely, systemic racism, ageism, sexism, and homophobia are as real today as they were 10 years ago when I got into city politics in Rio Vista, and we haven't seen a lot of change since then. The city did do a proclamation recognizing Gay Pride Month once 2 years ago. I'm not sure how that even came about, but it did happen once. So I guess we should show that as progress. We've got a long way to go. We have an opposite challenge of Benicia, where 2/3 of our population is 55 and older. The young people and young working families are the minority in town. And so we are definitely underrepresented on city council and commissions. Obviously, I'm looking to change that, starting with me. I will be the youngest mayor and only the 3rd female that Rio Vista has ever had as mayor. So you're welcome. Thank you, Carol.
Hakeem?
Thank you, Ms. Cullum. I think that is a great question. I agree. Number one, I am the first council member to even address systemic racism in the history of Vallejo. No one else had ever mentioned it, as we were just talking about who has the real progressive chops and who's willing to do the real work. I stand on my values and the work that I've done, and really being the first on a lot of different issues. I think that number one, I fought to get an office of equity into the budget. Every major Bay Area city, or most of them, have an office of equity to address all of these issues: sexism, racism, ageism, all of these different issues. And I think that I fought to get it in there. I included a budget to address systemic racism, and it was voted down, including one of my competitors, Robert McConnell, voted it down. I would love to know where in that budget he disagreed with, because this was the work. An office of equity is exactly what we need. Secondly, we actually had to fire an entire civil service commission because a commissioner said that if you're going to fire me over Me Too, you go fire me over Black Lives Matter. We had almost every female employee in the crowd watching to see what we did, and we could not get a vote to fire them first. And I was a yes vote. McConnell was a no vote. When we finally were able to get that group fired and address this issue, we had female employees crying at the fact that their needs had not been addressed. And eventually, Mr. McConnell was removed as the liaison for the Civil Service Commission, and we were able to get rid of that Civil Service Commission and address
Thank you, Hakeem.
need to move. Thank you.
Avanel?
Yes, unfortunately, this is a question that needs to be answered. Systemic inequality and inequity is real. And, you know, I'm the voice for the people. And one thing I can say as an immigrant, as a person of African descent, as a member of the LGBTQ community, and I'm over 50, so definitely ageism is going to come in there. We also have young people. You know, and we have members of, you know, who experience disability. And, you know, it's something that I feel that we have to really look at and not look at in terms of, you know, just talking or spewing what is or isn't. As a community, we have to do it. We have to have a diversity committee. I believe in committees, community oversight committees, because we're listening to the voice of the people, not the voice of one, not the voice of two, but the voice of the people. And Vallejo is a very diverse city. We have our own professionals in our citizens, okay? And so that's something that we really need to look at, is bringing our citizens into this conversation as what is needed. How are we going to address this system that has penetrated not just Vallejo, but many communities, and it's becoming transparent. And so for our community of Vallejo, as one of the most diverse cities in the US, we have to bring our diversity into play and not just look at, you know, one area or two areas, but I can't speak for everyone. Although I am in many different groups, we need other voices. This is not an I thing. This is a we thing. Thank you very much.
John?
Yes, I agree 100% with that diversity committee that was brought up. I also like the fact that you actually have someone at least partially paid by the city to liaison with that, and who is a real professional who is being paid to address that issue specifically. Again, we brought by district voting here to Vallejo. I was with Mina Diaz throughout almost every single meeting that was there. I spent hours on it. I went to a number of the different schools over here. I worked with Tiffany Jones, a whole host of different people. Hakeem voted against that. I have no idea why he's talking diversity if he's going to vote against letting all 4 of our 25% of the populations being able to be fairly represented by district system. Again, Black Lives Matter, absolutely. I've knocked doors for Kamala Harris. I marched with the NAACP in Ferguson. I spent 3 months on the ground with Obama in 2008. These are issues I believe in wholeheartedly, but there's also other ethnic segments of our society here. There is ageism, as you brought up, and we do need that committee that Avanel was talking about. We also need someone appointed directly within the city council, within the city hall, to make sure that someone is professionally being paid to address this with professional certification and can really bring it to the council and bring it repeatedly over and over consistently throughout the year. So I agree with a number of the different speakers out there, and all of the people are important, and absolutely no lives matter until Black Lives Matter, but there's a whole population we have to take care of here, and many different segments of our wonderful, diverse Vallejo. And with me as mayor, I would bring some new change, I'd bring some new vision.
Okay, thank you. John, or Robert.
Thank you. It's a very interesting question, especially since tonight I've been the direct victim of this, and also by innuendo on a number of times throughout the evening, actually. But I do want to address a number of things that one of my opponents rose. I do believe in the Office of Equity Advisor to the city, but we also have to be realistic. We have to be feasible, and our budget doesn't support that. Our budget would love to support a lot of the things that a lot of us want to see, but we have to look at reality. If it's not feasible, it's not going to happen. You know, I was a combat infantryman in Vietnam. There was no room for racism in combat units, maybe in other parts of the Union. But if you did that in the Army, when you were under fire with other people, you were highly dependent upon the person to your left and your right, no matter who or what they were. So if you practice that type of belief, you wound up being killed by your own fire, believe me. So that does not even exist in my mind. We do have a Human Relations Commission that's supposed to be addressing this. I haven't heard a peep out of them for a long, long time, and it's been a major disappointment. But they're there, and they're supposed to do the work. But the main thing a mayor can do that a council person cannot is they can become a public spokesperson. They can go on the TV shows. They can go on Channel 27 and 28. They can go on social media, and they can bring to the attention of the greater public the need for change, because it doesn't happen overnight. You don't get rid of bias simply by talking about it. And that's been illustrated by a number of our speakers tonight. We all have biases. As an attorney, I have taken 35 years of that type of training to put it out of our system. And I practice what I do.
Thank you, Robert. Well, a good question to end with and going on with everyone is, where is the money going to come from for these things that we're talking about doing? Let's start with Hakeem.
Thank you. That's a great question. The money has to come from creating revenue for our community. I think that part of the problem is we've had paralysis by analysis for the last 10 years. Old excuses, boogeymen, without addressing the real issues, which is we're not working on economic development. We're always figuring out why a project does not work instead of figuring out what projects will work and how that addresses systemic racism, a lack of jobs, a lack of opportunity. I haven't heard a jackhammer in the city of Vallejo in decades. And that's part of the problem. We can always stare at the slowly shrinking pie, but see, a mayor, you have to be able to look out and see what can we do to increase that pie? What can we do to create more opportunity? And we, quite frankly, haven't had that in over 10 years. We don't need old ideas. We don't need ideas where people say, this is what we can't do. This is the only money we have. When we have all the potential in the world to go out there and create revenue for this community. And quite simply, it has not been done in over 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Vanessa?
Can you please repeat the question again? Thank you.
Sure. All of these proposals sound great, but where is the money coming from for these?
Thank you. I think, you know, looking at our revenue, one, you know, we can start with a budget. We give 80 million to our law enforcement safety. And what does that say to our community? You know, the budget of Vallejo is barely over 100 million, but we give 80 to law enforcement. That's a problem. And so, you know, streamlining what we have right now in our budget, but also looking at what's being wasted. We have property that's being wasted. You know, and one of the things for me, I think when you're talking about bringing in money, who wants to come into a city that our governing board puts down? We have to change that in order to invite people in, because if we don't invite people in, it's not going to get better. So looking at areas where we are depleting our resources, you know, we can't bring revenue in if businesses do not feel safe. We can't bring revenue in if we're losing citizens. We can't bring revenue in. So these are places that, you know, we can talk about how we can bring revenue in, but if we don't address some of the challenges, all the ideas is not going to work. And so really looking at streamlining our budget to look at community enrichment so that we can bring in revenue that will be sustainable and consistent and permanent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John?
Yes, thank you. And absolutely $80 million, over 50% just on the VPD alone. We literally, my wife and I, we've had the Weed Whacker Patrol. There's 7 officers over there. That's about $1 million a year easily. Robert McConnell is liaison for them. Literally, as I'm running for mayor, I just had the police here in front of my house 2 days ago about weed whacking. Meanwhile, we're paying yet more and more money to bring in California Highway Patrol because we don't have enough staffing with our police. Why do they have a weed whacker patrol in the police department who are harassing a man who's running for mayor? Just outrageous. Also, why did the first thing the pothead community did is once they paid off their candidate, he came in and cut taxes. This is costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, millions of dollars in tax revenues that we should be getting out of the cannabis community. Now, I'm all against the war on drugs, and I was all supportive of the marijuana industry, but then to bring them in just so that they can get special interest breaks from the guy who they paid to put in there, that's outrageous. Again, I brought clean energy. This is jobs, jobs, jobs. This is the future. One of the candidates there who's from the status quo Deadwood City Council, he was for Orsom. He's literally gonna, at the top of the bay, just pollute toxins all throughout our Bay Area over a cement factory. That's the future? I don't think so.
Thank you, John.
Nobody would support clean energy. We had to bring in outdoors reality project from out of town to help out with that. Nobody would support us. So there's lots of ways we can make some revenue and cut corners. And we need new vision and real change.
Thank you. Robert, where are we
Yes,
going to get the money?
Well, there's only one way to deal with a lack of money. You have to deny, delay, or defer. And without the lack of money that this city has for the last decade, 5 decades really, that has been the only choice that most city councils have had. I agree that we have not expanded our tax base, and I've called for it before. And I believe that that stems from Vallejo being a company town for so long. We have to become a salesman of our company, and that's our city. I fortunately know how to sell. I went door to door and sold encyclopedias. I know to ask juries for money, and I get it. So I'm very in favor of, as a mayor, going out with our economic development team and attending the conferences and the businesses that have expressed an interest to be there. That's the nice thing about the mayor's office. It's right next to the planning department. Most people stop in there before they get to the planning. But we can also look at our salaries. We have one officer who's been there for a long time, and he's a great guy, but he's making over $600,000 a year. Now, is that right? No, because we could hire at least 3 or 4 officers at that rate were he not there anymore. But the main thing we need to do is to become even more aggressive in the attraction of businesses. We have reformed our planning department. We have reformed our building department. We've streamlined our process. We've done a lot of those things, and it's taken time, effort, and constant pushing on my part to get there. And we're starting to see the results now. For the first 6 years, we had to rebuild the bank.
Thank you.
After bankruptcy.
Now I'm going to go to wrap up. Every candidate will have 2 minutes to wrap it up.
Carol, we need to talk about that question.
I'm sorry?
We didn't. I don't think myself and the Benicia candidates got a chance to answer that question. Did we?
I'm sorry. You might have.
No, that's okay.
You might have some very good ideas.
Well, I didn't. I'm sorry. Maybe I misunderstood the question. I didn't know that it was addressed specifically to Vallejo.
Emily, go ahead.
In light of that, can you repeat the question, Carol?
No. Just a second.
Sorry.
Where's the money going to come for all these programs?
So great. It's a great question. And probably all of us as candidates have probably gotten this question at some point on the campaign trail. My answer is a lot like Avenel's actually, which is reprioritization. I would argue that, especially in the city of Rio Vista, the money is already there. We just, as a city, have to choose what our priorities are. We are like Vallejo in the sense that we have a large percentage of our budget being spent on public safety.
Emily, we're not hearing you. Emily? Emily? Emily?
It's all about. Do police officers have to go on every 5150 call, or can we send a mental health professional on? That's what resorts.
Emily, I'm going to stop you for now until you get more bandwidth. And let's go on to, sorry about that. Let's go on to Steve. How are you going to pay for all these programs?
Well, I think you have to understand that doing the same thing you've always done and expecting a different result isn't going to cut it. The city has not changed anything that they've been doing. They was continuing to spend money based on some unallocated balances we had from previous years. But I don't think we're taking any hard decisions yet. We haven't had those hard conversations yet about what are we going to do with our budget. And it's not only about raising revenue, it's also about looking at your expense side. As Christina mentioned Fitzgerald Field earlier, that's a one issue that we differed on. I voted against that project, even though I love baseball and it's historic and it's got a lot of sentimental value to a lot of Venetians. But I didn't think it was appropriate at this time in the middle of a pandemic to be committing over $1 million for the repair and the renovation of a baseball field when we have another baseball field a block away and we have multiple baseball fields up at Community Park. So I think it's trying to make those kinds of hard decisions that is going to be required. And I don't think, and then the other thing is we have put all of our focus on trying to help First Street and our business community. And we've done very little for the affected residents who have may have been furloughed or laid off or lost money. And they've got some potentially serious financial needs coming forward. And I think we need to be a little bit more balanced in the types of support we're providing to the entire community.
Christina, would you like to wrap this up?
I'd love to wrap it up. Yes, I did vote for Fitzgerald Field. You never vote against baseball. That is a tried and true statement. We are a full service city. That means we have our own police, fire, water system, wastewater, 30 parks, and the most spectacular library ever. Our citizens demand those services. They demand that they continue. And where revenue comes from is economic development. I've been fighting for the last 15 years about economic development. We have made very slow progress in that area, mainly because the city has not recognized our economic development office department as a department. So we need to concentrate on building our business-friendly opportunities. We have Amports, which is has a long-term lease. Now's the time to renegotiate, get some revenue from that. We need to look at partnering with Valero, finding out how we can make them more efficient and also their business partners. And we have a thriving cannabis business out in the industrial park that has the opportunity for revenue. We have to look for revenue. We can't keep going back and taxing our citizens, and we can't reduce our services. So I am not for limiting our library or merging it with the county. I am not for not spending money
Thanks,
for.
Christina.
You have to spend money for return.
Thank
Thanks.
you. And Emily, I'm going to let you try and get back on.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
You're going in and out.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah?
No? Yes? Okay, sorry. The Wi-Fi in Rio Vista is garbage. It's yet another campaign issue. But absolutely what I was talking about was reprioritizing our goals as a city. And I agree with the other speakers. Hopefully y'all can still hear me. While it is important that city funds are going to public service, that are going to fire and police, those are all important things, but we need to look at ways of maybe contracting some of that funding and putting it in other areas. So for example, do our police department have to go on every 5150 call, or is there a medical professional we can send in lieu of? Just one quick thing I just want to mention to candidate Kenny. I would love to have a weed whacker patrol in Rio Vista because the fire danger right now is incredibly high all across the state of California. So anybody out there doing code enforcement and making sure that weeds are maintained so that we don't burn down as a city is a great thing. So we've got to prioritize how we're spending those funds. Thank you, Carol, for giving me the opportunity to finish.
Thank you. Now, everyone is going to have 2 minutes to do their own wrap up. So I am going to go up to the top of the list. No, I'm going to go to the bottom of the list. Robert.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with members of the club and through the club to the greater public as well. I believe that I am probably better situated to be the mayor of this city than anyone else for a very long time. And that is because of a number of reasons. One, I've got the education. I have a bachelor's degree in public administration. I was writing my master's thesis on the right of the public employee to strike in California in public administration when I went to the Army. I have the experience. I've worked as an employee at the city, the county, the state, and the federal level. I've been on the planning commission of this city for 8 years. I've been on the charter review committee. I've been on the city manager's budget advisory committee that said, look, if you guys don't change your ways, this city is going to go into bankruptcy. And guess what? It did. I'm a financial services lawyer. I've spent decades litigating against large banks and some of the best attorneys, not just here in California, but throughout the entirety of the United States, from Miami, from New York City, from Dallas. I know how to take on the tough people and go head to head with them. But above all else, I've got the type of personality that a mayor's position needs to have. I'm logical, I'm analytical, I'm calm, I'm balanced in my approach, I'm reserved, but I am reasoned when I'm being reserved. I'm a listener. And one of the reasons, quite honestly, I'm a listener is that as a result of being in combat, I've had a little hearing loss. I have tetanitis. So in order for me to hear, I have to concentrate to listen. And that has taught me over the years to respect what my clients and what my members of the public and my colleagues too have to say, because I am open. Will Rogers once said, show me a man who can't change his mind, and I will show you a man who can never change the world. I go into everything saying, okay, what do I need to learn? Do I need to change? Do I need to adapt? And I practice what I preach.
Thank you, Robert.
I have a lot of vision. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Yes, thank you very much. This was a great opportunity. Good to even hear from the other candidates. Some good ideas all the way around. I really appreciate what you have done for us here today. Just a quick aside, Weed Whacker Patrol, absolutely need it. It shouldn't be under the police department, under Robert McConnell, where it's costing us millions of dollars instead of a few $100,000 for the public works, where it should be. But getting back to my closing here, again, I have proven experience. I have a new vision for Vallejo, and I have real change. The two council members, I mean, this place has just been toxic, and they seem to be running on the Trump defense. Everything's terrible. Vote for me one more time, and I'll fix everything that I blew. I mean, this place is just in shambles right now, and we need someone to come back with some of the priorities I have. My big three priorities would be, number one, economic stimulation. We need to get out to the community. We need to rebuild the businesses. We need to bring out an incubator. I was just today over with some youth with Club Stride. It's basically about the community of color, young people getting together and getting themselves into university and then becoming entrepreneurs out in our community. I think that's great. We need more of it. I think we need to reimagine safety in this community and make sure this community policing, again, it's not just about enforcement, it's about prevention, it's about intervention, but far more important, it's about empowerment. We need to get out to those youth and help them. And we need to get out into those communities and make sure there's money going into those communities instead of just to cops running around with guns on their. Why do you need a guy with a gun to come out and do the weed whacker patrol? If that's not for public works, I don't know what is. And then finally, we need a more beautiful, inclusive Vallejo. This place is just a hidden gem. How are we not exploiting it? How are we a ferry ride away from one of the most beautiful cities in the world, San Francisco, and we're not on top of this? So again, for a new vision and for real change, check out my website. I wish I had more of a chance to introduce myself here. JohnKenney4Mayor.com. Thank you very much. Appreciate what you did today.
Avenel.
Yes, thank you everyone for your time and presence, and to our community, thank you. I'm honored to be in your presence. Our city needs innovation and new ideas. As the spirit of the Bay, we must work together to heal, restore, and rebuild, highlighting our strengths to address our challenges. Transforming our city will be a new path in the city's journey through a collective community roundtable that is culturally responsive with partnership and collaboration. Economic progressiveness. I respect the other candidates, however, a new vision, a face that speaks to all our demographic, with a voice of inclusion, unity, the people's priority, a presence that's calm, assertive, I listen actively with creative ideas, who understands the need of the city from the core of its people. A mayor is one who leads the city to its best, modeling as a collective moving forward. We need a mayor who looks at change from a growth mindset of the city as a both and, meaning that everything is possible. As a solution-based thinker with an organizational mindset, I am using the words Community Enrichment Development Fund because we must put our community first to ensure consistent, permanent funding goes to our community for a city we all feel safe. We all feel safe and prosper. Over 20 years ago, I chose Vallejo as my home. I was 31 and a homeowner, and I've grown here as a community member. Let us create a city and community we all deserve. I am who I am because of who we are. And I want you to understand that. That goes to all our members of our community. We spoke about many things tonight. And one of the things that I really think is important for us to look at, the rich of our demographic, the diversity, and that is our economic development, to tap into our community. Thank you.
Hakeem.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the Stonewall Democratic Club for allowing us to speak here. You know, we have a huge decision to make, and it's really a question of where we want our city to go. My colleague, Robert McConnell, talked about his temperament and how calm he is. Robert, I'll tell you, that's a dog whistle, whether you know it or not. Running on the fact that you think that the Black candidate doesn't have the temperament is simply wrong. I think that just being calm while you do nothing isn't the right way to go. Quite frankly, what have you done to address systemic racism? Nothing. What have you done to address LGBTQ rights? Nothing. Just showing up when someone throws up the flag, that's not good enough. You were a no vote when it came to addressing the Me Too movement. You were a no vote when it came to using the budget to address systemic racism. And quite frankly, that's not the direction that we need to go. Just being calm while you do nothing. We need a mayor who's actually going to take real action, address systemic racism, address civil rights, address LGBTQ rights. And under the Brown administration, you will see that. You know, I was raised to own my stuff, as they say. I will own the last 2 years that I've been on council and the decisions I've made, but I would ask my colleague to do the same. Own the 6 years where we've had the highest amount of police-related shootings while nothing happened. Own the fact that we've done nothing.
2 years, Hakeem. What have you done? What have you done?
Own the fact that, you know, and own the fact that you've done nothing to address our housing gap or creating opportunity or livable wage jobs for our community. You have to own that if you're going to be a leader. We can no longer have leaders who create boogeymen, because there'll be a boogeyman next year. You can always judge what someone's going to do based on what they've done. Period. If you spent your last 8 years making excuses and being the sole no vote, good for you. That's not leadership. I spent the last 2 years leading. I passed in the history the first ordinance with dealing with rent control, which you sat out on. I addressed systemic racism. I brought Obama's My Brother's Keeper to city council. I included the Civilian Oversight Commission into their budget. I reached out to the Cahoots program and brought them to the city. I brought the Advanced Peace. I'm the one who's been doing the work. Thank you. Brown for mayor.
Okay, the next is Emily.
Thanks so much, Carol. I'm actually going to keep it really brief. You guys are probably really happy to hear that. Can you all hear me? Since I'm having bandwidth problems, I'm going to give you the abridged version of my outro. Can you hear me?
Yes. I hear you.
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you again for this opportunity to talk to you about my campaign and to help you guys get to know me a little better and about some of the important issues that are facing Rio Vista. Like I said before, when I get elected as mayor, I will be only the third female mayor to ever be elected to the council as mayor. And I will be the very first stay-at-home parent of young children to ever be elected as mayor. That's a big deal. And I think that gives me a unique perspective on the needs of all of Rio Vista. I am a vocal social justice and equality advocate. And that mindset helps guide my decisions as we move the city forward. You know, thank you for all the incredible work you do. I don't know if you guys hear it enough, but we as Democrats, we're part of a movement here, and I've never felt more united as a Democratic Party as I do on this day, speaking to you today. We may have our differences, Vallejo candidates, and you may have a lot of things to work out, but we are all Democrats. And let's not forget that, and let's keep our eyes on the prize. And thank you so much, Stonewall, for even existing to represent LGBTQ Democrats in Solano County. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next is Steve.
Thank you. So I graduated from Cal in 1973 with a bachelor's degree. I have a master's degree in urban planning. I spent 30 years in city government. I think I've seen both the good and the bad in terms of what kinds of programs work and which kind of programs don't. I do have the endorsement of the county Democratic Party that it took 2 votes. I got 75% of the vote the first time. There was a strange revote that happened. I got over 57% of the vote the second time. So I am the endorsed candidate. I think that what sets me apart is that I'm willing to ask the hard questions. I'm willing to make the hard decisions. And one of the things that distinguishes me from Christina is I was pushing for a mandatory mask ordinance early on. It took 2 meetings before that finally passed. She did vote against it the first time. She voted for it the second time. I also had a proposal that would have provided certificates, $100 certificates to Benicia residents who've been affected by the pandemic that they could spend in downtown restaurants and small businesses. It was all set up that Benicia Main Street could administer it with no cost, or well, the cost would be $50,000 that the city would put up, but no administrative time. That was also opposed. It's still a good idea. I'm not sure why it did not get approved early on. The city of Martinez just adopted the exact same thing 5 months later. If we had been doing this for the last 5 months, who knows what, I'm not going to suggest that could have saved some restaurants in town, but it certainly would have been an indicator of the city's commitment to the community. The pledges I have made to the community is that I'm not going to take any union money. I'm not taking any corporate money. There is a Measure D, which is a cannabis measure, whether to allow another dispensary in town. I have supported dispensaries all the way through, but I've publicly said that if the voters say that they don't want any more, I will respect that and I will not vote for them any longer. Christina was not willing to make that same pledge.
Thank you.
So the other thing I would say is that I believe in the use of social media. I use it a lot. To me, it's a modern version of the town hall. It can be toxic, it can be difficult, but it is the kind of thing that people pay attention to. And I think it's important for leaders to communicate in as many ways as they can. So I will.
Your time is up, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Christina.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to thank the Stonewall Democrats and you, Carol, for running the forum. This endorsement is very personal to me. As I mentioned to you, I'm a mom of 2 gay sons. I've seen their challenges. I've seen what has been what I said earlier. I thought we had come further than we have. There's a lot of division in our country. There's a lot of division in our town. And it is going to be up to me as the next mayor to bring people together. I was fortunate last year visiting in New York to go to Stonewall to see where all of the movement started. And it made a big impression on me. Benicia has been forward in flying the LGBTQ flag. We hosted a pride event because the city backed out of it. And we have embraced the diversity that our LGBTQ neighbors and residents have asked for. I am, as I say, very involved in our community. I believe that it's very important that we bring our businesses together. As I say, that there's a lot of division. Steve mentioned a couple of things. First of all, correction on the masks. There was never a vote the first time. My idea was to do a We're Open campaign to get people educated instead of regulation. The other thing, the downtown dollars, it wasn't a good program. Instead of the 50,000 going into downtown dollars at the time when many businesses weren't open to accept them, we put that $50,000 into our Family Resource Center. That went directly to people in need. And we have been funding the needs of our community as it's come forward. So I'm very proud.
Time is up.
All right, and I appreciate your consideration for me as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for being here tonight. This was a lively discussion. And be sure and tell all of your friends and relatives that they can see you all live on, what's it on?
YouTube.
At YouTube.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it will be up on YouTube for a while.
Yeah. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for hosting.
All right, and with that, thank you all candidates from the chair, and thank you, Carol, so much for handling this. It was great. Thank you. And everyone have a great night. Be safe, wash your hands, mask up, and all that jazz.
You as well. Bye-bye.